I just think that when it comes to entrepreneurship, books probably are not the right way. You can learn other things through books, right? You can learn to think more critically. You can learn about human psychology. You can learn so many things through books, but don't assume that you're going to learn how to fundraise, you're going to learn how to operate, all of that through a book. That you have to actually do it yourself, or you have to have stupendously great advisors like just there with you, right? Yeah, that's my advice.
Great advice, by the way. Great advice.
Welcome to Startup Wins. Twice a month, we share real stories and smart tips. Subscribe and join the journey.
Welcome to Startup Wins. Today, we are very lucky to have my new friend, David Yi, join us for the show. And I could tell you a lot about David from all the things that we've kind of talked about in his Founders Chapel. David, do you mind introducing yourself?
Thank you for this platform. It's been a pleasure getting to know you, Brandon. I treasure and value all that you've been bringing to the Founder Chapel. I debated whether I should put the S in there, Founders Chapel or Founder Chapel, but I realized I got to make it personal. So Founder Chapel at the moment. So I started Founder Chapel it started because I'm in seminary right now. Yes, I'm a seminary student while being a VC. I always feel like everyone is Batman, right? And the reason we're Batman is because by day, we're kind of running our corporations. Or we're kind of being grown-ups. And at night, our true selves come out. Whether it's a vigilante justice warrior, or in my case, like everyone out there, I'm trying to figure out how to bring my full self forward. And in that journey, Founder Chapel has been a big part of it because in that seminary, we were, for me, because I'm in Southeast Asia, I'm originally from the United States, born and raised there, but I realized I needed to figure out a way to blend my multiple identities. Like I am a Christian, I believe in redemptive investing and all of this, but I also don't think my job necessarily, for example, is just to serve Christians. I love being with Christians, because, we're brothers and sisters, but I believe that for me, being in Southeast Asia in particular, my job is to work with everyone, right? I'm like here, I'm not of the world, but I'm serving everyone here. And the concept of a chapel is something I learned in seminary. Whether you go to prison, there's a chapel. In the Navy, there's a chapel. The police department, there's a chapel. Universities have chapels. So once upon a time, these chapels were these ecumenical. They're religious in some ways, but they weren't tied to, the job wasn't to proselytize, right? Say, you must become Christian or you're going to go to hell. The point of these chapels were to serve and be present with the community when they most need them, right? When people were going through the hardships, the downtimes, the weariness. And I realized that as a venture capitalist, so many founders are going through these hard moments. And I thought, wait, where is the chapel of the startup community? And I thought, wait, you know what? Maybe we should try to start one. And what would that look like? What would a chapel for founders look like? And I realized, well, I just need to be present. And I didn't know how to do that other than just to throw on a Zoom call once a week. And so that's how Founder Chapel started. That's who I am. And I hope that's a good intro. Yeah.
Oh, that was a great intro. Frankly, no other VC I know has a chapel, by the way. I've enjoyed it quite a bit personally. I wish I could have attended every single one that I've seen so far. Have missed a couple, but let's dial back a little bit. So you are a venture capitalist or a VC, as you mentioned. So tell us what that means to you and what some of the things you're doing with your, I think it's Ethos Fund, correct?
Yeah, the Ethos Fund. The Ethos Fund is a fund focused on the United States and Vietnam at the moment. That's our Fund 1 thesis. Fund 2, which we are in the middle of actually raising, is going to be much more broad. It's more of a migration fund. So I believe in a few things as a venture capitalist. I think venture capitalists are stewards. There are stakeholders like our founders, which are obvious, and then there are the limited partners who are our partners. Some might call these middlemen. In a previous life, I was a lawyer. A lawyer is a good steward. You're an advocate, right? You're a middleman in some ways too. You're bringing voice, or you're becoming a face for someone who might not want to be represented, or can't represent themselves the way they want to in court. So lawyers are middlemen. Some of the, we vilify middlemen, but I think middleman has a lot of good work, stewardship that can be done. As a venture capitalist, I think I'm in the work of education in that sense. As a middleman, my job is to continuously bring information to both parties in addition to capital. But as of late, I've been thinking, and this is why the Ethos Fund is special. What it means for me to be a venture capitalist isn't just to bring capital and education. I realized something. We have an amazing opportunity as venture capitalists to do something grand and innovative. I think we think innovation is the territory of founders and entrepreneurs. But I think venture capitalists have an amazing opportunity to innovate. And how we at Ethos Fund and how I, as a venture capitalist, are trying to do that is I realize in the United States, immigrants have been the key to innovation for so many things. So how do I, or in my position, like my mini position in the world, help more amazing founders migrate to the United States, land and succeed? What does that mean? How do we create the right community, not just the logistics, right? So for me, venture capital is creating more access, creating more opportunity, creating more bridges, creating more education, all of that. That's what we do as venture capitalists when we're doing our job correctly. And for us right now, in our little world, is to bring more immigrants from Asia to the United States. That sounded so weird, but yeah, that's what we're doing. Yeah.
That's a fascinating angle, to be honest. I like Vietnam, frankly, so I didn't know that Vietnam was a focus of yours. It makes a lot of sense, actually. I think a lot of Korean companies are focusing on the Vietnam currently because it used to be China, but now Vietnam's growing so fast. How did you get into VC? Let's start there, or let's also roll back a little bit more. How did you get into venture capital?
Well, so here's what. I've been an entrepreneur for the vast majority of my professional career. It started out as in the Peace Corps. I was serving the U.S. Peace Corps as an education volunteer. And when you're stripped with resources, when you're given only $100 per month to basically teach English to over 800 kids, you become entrepreneurial. And that's when the teaching entrepreneur bug first bit me. And henceforth, I did, as most people, like our journeys go, I went to law school, I went to graduate school, I did business studies, all of these things, because that's what the right thing was to do, as, anyone who is in their 20s and trying to figure out how to use their talents for the betterment of the world, you go to graduate school sometimes. And that's what I ended up doing. But throughout that entire period, I was always teaching at night, part-time, full-time. And what ended up happening was when I first got my law firm gig, I was at Wilson Sonsini, and that was probably the kind of the death nail, actually. Well, it was in Silicon Valley, and some of the clients that I began to see were founders. And they were having all the fun, I felt. And this was right after Lehman collapse, right? Even so, the founders were getting all the funding, they were getting term sheets. And I think it happened when this guy named Larry, I'll never forget. His name's Larry. He's a Chinese American guy who got $23 million in funding with just the stupidest idea. So I sat there thinking, wait, why am I being a glorified secretary? I can do this. I should be doing this. And so the rest is history. I just made my parents cry like crazy because I was like, I'm not going to be a lawyer. I want to go try this. Started my education company, and henceforth, I've been just creating education companies, ed tech companies for about, 15 plus years. I went through 8 different companies, 3 exits, and now I'm here. What happened through that journey was I got to talk to a lot of venture capitalists and non-venture capitalists, a lot of angels, a lot of high net worth individuals, a lot of strategic investors. All of my exits were M&As, by the way. I sold to companies in China or Korea. And something I learned through that process is like, dang, I hate venture capitalists. I hate them. Why? None of them, I felt like none of them really, really, truly were on my side. They were on my side in the very beginning when I was signing the papers and we're negotiating, especially if my company was doing well. But once the money came in, it felt always the script changed 100% of the time. It was never the case where it didn't. It always flipped. The script flipped where, the monthly or quarterly reports. They always had complaints about it. In the name of, grooming me or helping me grow, they would actually, in some ways, impede on the business. Look, in hindsight, I realized like, I studied business. I've ran businesses, but I realized that these numeric numbers ran type iBanking type thinking is something that's forced on a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in the early stages. It could be actually detrimental. So in any case, long story short, I was very, very, very jaded. I thought, you know what? One of these days, if I get to the other side of the table, I'm not going to be that way. My last company before jumping into venture capital was an AI for education company. We raised like 175 million from SoftBank. We did the entire shebang, right? Because by then I've been there, done that. I know exactly how to raise money. I know how to play the game. I know how to expand the companies. And we went to Series D, and then I exited my shares. And my CPO at the time, Chief Product Officer, his name's Simon. As we were transitioning out of that company, I was turning 40 and I had my first kid. And I approached Simon and I said, Simon, you know what? We're entering our 40s. If we were 80, like Jeff Bezos had that moment of when he's 80, what would he regret? I thought, oh no, if I'm 80, what would I regret if I didn't do this? And we both arrived on the conclusion that we'd be extremely regretful if we didn't at least go all in and being venture capitalists. Because we both have been in entrepreneurship for so long. And in some ways, grass is greener on the other side. And we thought, you know what? We can do this. We should do this. We should do this, if anything, for our kids. So, one day they might be entrepreneurs and to try to change the narrative a little bit. And thus, Ethos Fund started. I'd like to tell you that all that sentiment about hating VCs and, oh my gosh, has continued. And in some ways, I would say 50-50. Some of that like fervor, that anger against why is VC the way it is remains 50%. But, there's nothing like walking in the shoe of another person to start having empathy and understanding where they're coming from. So I would say the other 50%, call it I've grown wiser, or maybe some people that you've switched to the dark side maybe, but I don't think so. I think what it is that I'm beginning to understand why some of the VCs that invested in me had to do what they did. I'm beginning to understand and have a little more compassion about, I see why they were pressuring me at this point, or why they thought the way they did, or what some of these shortcomings, it's not forgivable, but I get it, why they were being so human there. This is how I became a venture capitalist, like my history to now, and why today I am still the VC who hates most VCs, not all VCs, but I'm a very empathetic creature too. Yep.
Became a parent basically, and then you started to relate with what other parents were doing. But you're right. There's a lot of parents who actually screw up, and there's a lot of parents who really don't know how to guide their kids. I have the same exact feeling as you. This is our first venture into venture capital. As a result, we're being a little bit more idealistic on our side, but it doesn't hurt, because questioning the VCs will make the VCs better. And I love the fact that you did. Before jumping into maybe more of the venture capital kind of part of the equation, let's talk a little bit about your founder kind of hat, because you did that. You said 8 different startups, 3 of them with exits. Yep. What are some thoughts initially after looking back at all that time? I mean, it was congratulations on the last one. You raised quite a bit of money. I don't know what happened to the company, but what are some things that let's start off by asking, what are some things that you could say you learned in that whole process that you are glad now, after doing all of that, you can give at least a few tips to future startup founders?
There's so much I learned. As an entrepreneur, something I learned is this. There is no entrepreneur. So look, I think since our birth, we have our parents who educate us, and then I think the vast majority of the human population goes through some sort of K through 12 schooling, right? And I mean, I think we take it for granted, but these K through 12 schooling, it's a rite of passage where we are groomed to think a certain way. We're groomed to respect mathematics as a language of logic. We're groomed, by and large, to respect English as a language of global literacy, like global business. We're taught to respect critical thinking. We're taught to harmoniously work with others, but not cheat and do our own work, right? I mean, there are these like assumptions baked into K through 12 education. Because we're so used to that conditioning of, hey, you know what? There are answers, there are correct ways to do it, and this is the way we're supposed to be trained. And after this, it goes to college. There's just these assumptions that are baked into us that when we do become entrepreneurs, it's a little bit wild, like, right? Because even if you go to accelerators or there's no startup school proper out there where it teaches you when you should raise money and when you shouldn't, when you should be on the watch out, how you should fill your cap table or not. There's just a bunch of things that the only way to learn is just kind of go through it. In fact, go through it and fail a few times. I think those who failed are also probably the best at it the second or third or fourth times. And it's just kind of crazy, but that's like, frankly, the only way to learn. I mean, I've seen startup schools out there. I've seen like university programs and schools, but there's only so much you can just absorb through the brain and just learn. You can read all the literature you want, but in some ways you have to go through the pain, the journey. I would equate it to, look, I can read about dating all I want, right? I can read about the romantic act of courtship and sex. You have to go through it yourself to actually know how it's done. You know what I mean? All of it. I quit the same thing with entrepreneurship. So my advice to entrepreneurs and founders out there is this. Number one, if you are in your 20s, cool. But if you're in your teens, do it now. Like, it's okay. It's okay just to try something, is my point. Entrepreneurship doesn't have to be something technical. Hardly any of mine were. Only like I'd say the latter two, or ed techs or tech. Entrepreneurship involves even things like SMB, selling a simple coffee, or running a retail store. These are all entrepreneurship. These can all lead to you being a better tech entrepreneur too. And the reason I say all this is I think we read on newspapers and medias, we get inspired by the Elon Musk and Steve Jobs, and we think those are the real entrepreneurs, and that's what that's the apex, and that's what we need to strive for. But I would disagree. I honestly think a few things. I think the smartest and best entrepreneurs in the world don't play the VC game. Like, not to say that if you play the VC game, you're dumb. No, you're not. The VC game is for certain type of entrepreneurs, tech entrepreneurs, high scale, fast growth type entrepreneurs. If you're not in that type of business, and I would say the vast majority of businesses are not in that category, then learn through trial and error the type of investors you need to look for. And do you even need an investor? There's a book by Bo Burlingham. I think that's how you say it, Burlingame or Burlingham. It's called Small Giants. The thought that you don't have to pursue growth all the time. The thought that, and this is my advice to all entrepreneurs, think about this. Is your business the kind of business that should be slow and steady and more focused on quality and community and legacy than fast growth and media? And businesses like that exist. In-N-Out Burgers, family owned to this day, slow and steady. And Panda Express, about electronics in Chicago. There's endless lists of examples of businesses that decided to take the slow and steady and quality route. And I would encourage a lot of entrepreneurs to actually think about those routes. The media likes to highlight the tech entrepreneurs who are growing fast and breaking things and changing the world through innovative technology. But your gift and calling might be something else, right? In business. And that, I think, is much more enviable in my head. To create the kind of company that will last beyond you to many, many generations to come, right? Not all of us should be going to create the next Google. In fact, a lot of people crash and burn in trying to do that and get acquired by Google instead. But why not, play a different game? So all entrepreneurs, I encourage you to have a metacognitive, reflect in yourself, ask yourself what kind of business I have. Ask a lot of people, and don't worry, many more people are willing to help than you think. Don't raise money unless you have to. And again, you're not going to get that answer unless you have the trial and error and you have the right people advising you. That's only two ways you can learn entrepreneurship. I don't think books are the best way. By the way, books are great. I read all the time. I'm not discouraging you from reading from books. I just think that when it comes to entrepreneurship, books probably are not the right way. You can learn other things through books, right? You can learn to think more critically. You can learn about human psychology. You can learn so many things through books, but don't assume that you're going to learn how to fundraise, you're going to learn how to operate, all of that through a book. That you have to actually do it yourself, or you have to have stupendously great advisors like just there with you, right? Yeah, that's my advice.
Great advice, by the way. Great advice. You did 8 startups, as you already mentioned. How many of them did you have co-founders? How many of them did you do solo? Tell us a little bit about your journey with partners, maybe some of the learnings you had with who you selected and how you selected them. I find personally the selection process to be one of the most painful processes, but also at the same time, one of the most exciting processes and could make or break your startup. Any thoughts?
I think co-founders are the most important in success and failure of the business. And and when people hear that in this generation of entrepreneurs, the automatic response might be, oh, then heck, I should just be a solo entrepreneur, solo founder. But there's a saying, right? If you want to go fast, yes, go alone. But if you want to go far, you have to go together. And that wisdom is so true. Of the 8 companies, I'm just looking back, I had, besides one, I always had a co-founder all the time. The first one, I didn't have a co-founder. And you know what? I went fast. It grew fast. It went very, very fast. But also, picture this. My first startup was a LSAT tutoring business, relying on me. And I was the bottleneck too. And you know what's funny is that's really hard for a business that grows fast, that founder, to have the humility, the appropriate humility to make the company uncomfortably pivot and grow, really, because you are the boss and you are right and you are smart. I think that's the kind of default for many people. You are some extraordinary human being, and I know there are people who are way better than I am who can have that reflective moment and completely crush themselves as solo founders and move. I feel that solo founders who are able to do that have a good team around them, and their team keeps them accountable, and their team has significant equity. They might not be co-founders, and they're able to, but there's something about having an audience that helps you as a human being become more honest, more humble, and do the right thing for the company. So as a solo founder, I'm not saying it's impossible, but for me as a solo founder, it's hard because I had 0 employees. I was like a solopreneur, solo founder. So that was terrible. I think that already says, unless I was like, because I was young, I was stupid and unable. I'm not saying young equals stupid, but with the lack of experience, it was really hard as a solo founder to have the kind of system in place to grow a business that would be everlasting. It'd be a different story if I had done it today, frankly. I think I'd do a much better job of bringing that audience, right? And who will keep me accountable and do the right thing. Having said that, most of us, if we're building something that's going to, if you truly care about the company, you truly are thinking about, wait, if it's just about cash flow, making cash, guys, go solo. Just go solo. I think that's the right answer. But if it's, yes, cash is one thing, but I'm trying to build something great, you want founders, co-founders, and you want someone who is temperamentally, not just skill, maybe different from you. For example, and this is my last point, Ethos Fund, I have Simon Shin, who is my partner. He is very different from me. He's very different. I think I'm like at 300 miles per hour, my thinking speed. He's more methodical and data driven. I will go, break it, make it, move and act, because action creates information. Simon is more like information analysis before you create action. And there's a lot of frustration that could happen because of that. But here's my point. The difference in temperaments don't become an argument if both of you have the same baby and you care about that baby more. We both care about Ethos Fund so much more that when there's that, when we expect it, that difference in temperaments and difference in approach and angles of analysis, how it could clash, we foresee it and work, and we learn a lot, by the way, because I find myself thinking the way Simon thinks often, and he thinks the way I think. It helps us make better decisions for the baby. And yes, in the beginning it was tough, but if you and your co-founders can get through that beginning part of the marriage, oh my God, and you don't get divorced, it just becomes stronger and stronger and stronger, right? So my advice to everybody is, yes, have co-founders. My advice to everybody is it's not easy. Nobody said it is. And I think if you're going to build something great and you want deeper cash flow, I think co-founders make sense. And by the way, before you yell or point fingers at your co-founder, go pray and look at yourself. You know, oftentimes it's you. right? If you can change, your co-founder will be inspired to change.
Where did you find these co-founders? At YC Startup School, church? Were these friends that were around for many years? Tell us a little bit about your, I guess, discovery of these co-founders.
I don't believe in finding the best of the best of the best person to become your co-founder. I know some people think that's weird, but I really don't believe. So there's these different philosophies out there of working with people, right? Some people think that you have to work with the best person, but the best person who has no integrity, no trust, and that's the worst person. I mean, what does best mean to you if it's skill set wise? And that's the thing. I think a lot of people go to these YC events, these startup school events, these things to find the best fit person who is passionate about founding a startup and technically gifted or business wise gifted. We have to go find these people, and because they're so driven, they're the right people. But no, I don't think that's the criteria, the primary criteria. Skill sets you can grow. In fact, passion can also grow. But one thing you can't is trust, integrity, and this what I call chemistry. So all my co-founders, Brandon, I found them, yeah, sometimes through church, sometimes through school, sometimes through other friends who referred them to me. And I am a believer in that. I mean, you could call it voodoo, but I don't think, I think there's a logic to this, and I'll get to that. But there are what, 8 billion people in the world? We're not going to meet like the best of the best of the best of the best of those 8 billion people. It's a waste of time. You're lucky if you meet like even 0.1%. You're never going to meet even 0.1% of that 8 billion. So look, you already have people around you. Survey them. Ask who you can trust, who you can, enarmor with your vision. If they're down and game, try it with them. If it doesn't work out, I don't believe in the hire slow, fire fast. Just get together. If it doesn't work out, split up. It's okay. My point simply being is that you shouldn't waste time, is my point. And I think there is logic to that. Yes, you should be careful who your co-founders are, but come on. If you have some of the basics down and you can trust this person, try it. If it doesn't work out, be mature enough to be able to split it. I know that's easier said than done. And I know some people would look at this and be like, no, dude, that's going to create a lot of heartache and whatnot. But in my experience, everyone that I got into business with, even after we walked away, yeah, it was a little awkward the first few months, but we became closer afterwards. As long as you have the maturity to go back and knock on their door and reach out and have some drinks with them again, right? So again, why is it weird? It's because you're being weird about it. As long as you're the willing to take initiative, everything ends up becoming okay, even if things should become weird. My point again, find co-founders, find them everywhere. Don't look too far. They might be right around you, and just work with them.
I like the fact that you point out that you shouldn't look so hard, like try to perfect the process of finding the best co-founder, because you're right, the percentages or the chances of you finding this perfect co-founder is pretty small. And it reminded me of kind of a tweet that I was planning on writing on X, and that was, in terms of percentages, making or generating 1 million ARR is not that hard in my opinion. Like almost anybody and their mother and whoever can generate 1 million ARR, but getting to 10 million ARR is not easy. Those odds are stacked against you. But then going to 100 million ARR and plus, that kind of challenging. Obviously there's different industries, so it's easier to get to 100 million ARR in certain industries. But I ask this because the chances of getting to that third level of annual recurring revenue is small. But what I'm asking now, if you don't mind, is what are some key factors to get you from 1 to 10, 10 to 100? And I'm going to throw one idea at you, because I know one founder I'm going to be interviewing here at the end of September, Dan Shapiro. He got to the 100 million ARR mark. I can't remember if it was 2022. That's after getting gobbled up by Google. That was his first kind of major liquidity event. And then he worked for Google, and then he ended up trying to build, I think it was a game. And then he realized 3D printing is important. And that's why he went and built Glowforge. One thing that was very apparent is that he was throwing assistants or executive assistants at me to schedule our interview. And so I found, interesting. Out of many of the interviews, I haven't had a lot of executive assistants thrown at me, except one former colleague, which I'll potentially introduce you to later. But Dan was the only one who's like, schedule with my EA or whatever. And he's the only one that I know who's generating 100 million ARR. The other ones are at the 1 to 10 million. So do you think that's true? You need lots of EAs or an EA to get to the 100 million mark? And what are other things to get from 1 to 10, 10 to 100 that you can think of?
Yeah. Oh my God. We could have like such a deep conversation about this, but to kind of my 2 cents about this, okay? Um, a few things. So from 1 to a million, like you said, is easy. Show up every day, deliver. 1 to a million is many people get there. To get to 10 million, you need a system. You got to somehow go beyond you. And most people, believe it or not, get in the way of their own system. They somehow believe that there's something magical about themselves or their ego, or the spotlight needs to be on them or something. The type of people who are able to make $1 million relying purely on their charismatic, loud gifts are the ones that need to somehow soften those loudness, get that introverted, like a systematic thinker person to systematize what's working to get to the 10 million, is my opinion. By the way, these are generalities. By the way, from 10 million to even 20, 30, there's some growth there that has to happen. And I think that with all the companies I've been in, the way we reached, by the way, the biggest company I've been in, we reached about 80 to 90 million. Okay. So, and let me just kind of get there. To get to about from 10 million to break the 50 million mark, in my opinion, is people have to learn to diversify their business. It needs to come in different pipelines. With all the businesses where we hit above 50 million ARR, we have to actually get diversified. It always came, I dominated the local market, I have to go global. Or I have this product offering that's B2C, I have to go to B2B. There was always that pivoting, that always had to happen. It was really, really hard to cross that 50 million mark otherwise. Now, granted that I've never been to the 100 million mark, I haven't. I came very close, 90 million. But here's the thought process that did change. I realized a few things. When we were getting that 90 million ARR, Brandon, believe it or not, it wasn't me. It was having like these amazing people working with me, like literally. And these people were way more brilliant and then that vertical than I was. And the trust in me was so strong for them. Like it wasn't just believing in the vision that I had, but in the integrity of what I brought every single day for the last, like, let's say 4 years. They believed in that. And so they were willing to like stake their professional mind and life and just talent to taking it to the next level. And oftentimes next level meant whether it was systems, operations, whether it was product or sales or even HR, these people took it to the next level for us. So what ended up happening was getting into 100 million ARR, in my opinion, is less about, I don't know, maybe a tech company can get there very, very quickly, yes, by having good tech and a lot of users, I agree. But for most businesses, even if it's a tech company, you need to be gifted with a lot of good people who work for you. That's what gets you to 100 million, even a way above. And then it's sustainable. You've created something that you can even walk away from a little bit. But my point is that how do you get blessed with good people to come and work for you? That's not something that just happens. It happens because you showed up every day. To kind of wrap it up, 0 to 1 million is all about you just being diligent. Million to 10 million is about systems. 10 to 50 is about diversification. So you have to almost do that 1 to 10 million again, but through diversity, it gets easier, right? Because diversifying, relying on past success. But to get to 100 million, you have to be blessed with the right people who are willing to actually take it there with you and for you in some ways. So that's the formula in my head.
Great. Love those answers. I think that those are going to be very helpful tips for anybody going to each level. Now, you raised a lot of money. You spoke about at the end there when you talked about your last company, you raised 175. Did you raise the money in the United States? Did you raise it via certain vehicles? Did you raise it? I'm sure your ability to raise money just got better and better because you did 8 different startups. One thing I've learned and maybe it's a hypergeneralization because obviously every region's different. But the United States seems like and maybe one of the reasons why you don't like them as much, or the majority of them, we're gamblers in the United States with our money, right? We just spray and pray, right? But when you go to Europe or you go to Asia, interestingly, those VCs or those people who have money to invest in companies, they're a bit more conservative. They're tight with their money. So did you approach Asian investors, European? Did you stick with the gamblers in the United States? How did you think about this whole process? Did you learn about it like along the way? Please elaborate.
Yeah, I was always in the US when I was raising. I've never raised from outside the US. What's funny is because all my M&As most of them were outside the US. And there's something there, by the way. There's some very, very good wisdom there, I think. Yeah, I think what you said is correct. Maybe it's because I was raising from the US that there's that sentiment. I've never tried to raise from, yeah, a VC from Asia, for example. But a big part of that was because all of my businesses were US facing, like always. And it made sense for me to raise from people who understood this market better. Things have changed now where a VC from Asia will invest into an entrepreneur who's US facing. Yeah, I think that's why I have the sentiment that I do. Having said that, I agree with you. It is, I think the investors out the global, Europe and even Australia, Asia, tend to be a little tighter. And that's okay though, right? But the exchange there would be that although they don't pray and spray, and I'm not, by the way, pray and spray is a bad thing. Although their pockets aren't so open and liberal, I think the VCs out there are more missional. They're more intentional outside the US.
You've obviously met a lot of people that have helped your journey, supported your journey, and were more positive in your journey. But then you've also met some that were probably very toxic and unfortunately uninformed, let's call it, or maybe even weak to a certain degree.
Yep.
How did you deal with some of these folks in that latter category? Because I imagine you probably had to dissolve the relationship, but I imagine also that there was a good number of them. But maybe I'm wrong. You seem like a very positive person, so I imagine that more positive people were attracted to you. But did you find a lot of people who were in that weak category? And yeah, just tell us a little bit about maybe some tips that startup founders will probably have to deal with at some point.
I think the mistake that a lot of startup founders that I meet these days, again, now that I'm on this side of the table, I get to see so many founders. Because when I was doing it, I just knew what I was doing. So just to tell you what I was doing, I never okay. The craziest I've ever done was knock on like 200 doors, 200 like investors' doors. But you know what's funny is I did that only once and that was it. I don't necessarily recommend it. That's not a bad strategy to just, it's like friends, okay, knocking on 200, 300 investors' doors to see which one comes back. Something about that seems very grindy and not positive energy like you're talking about. Something that's worked for me as a founder, and I'm realizing that this isn't normal, maybe, is there's always rich people around you. I've always realized as a founder, when I was a founder, whenever I needed money, I thought about who's the richest person, two people in my network right now. I just literally think about them and I'd go to them and I wouldn't ask for money. I would tell them about my problem. I would tell them about what needs to happen. And I would ask them, do you know anyone in your network who could help me with this? Right? And they're more than willing to help. Sometimes I'd have to give advisory shares away, but never, like that was like once. Never happened usually. And I've always utilized my inner circle, outer circle network to always find the wealthy angels. And then these angels always brought me the right VCs. So I never had to go crazy, ever. Even my M&As always just happened because my investors, my network had people who were interested in what I was buying and I was vibing it correctly. So, and I realized how that's maybe not normal, but I don't know why. It's not normal. It should be more normal, is my opinion. But in any case, for those of us who don't do it this way, my advice is this. I've seen it work with a lot of founders around me. Number one, irrespective of your energy, If they don't know you exist, they don't know you exist. Simple, right? Lately, I've been finding a lot of cool founders through LinkedIn. I really have. There's some amazing deals that I've been doing through LinkedIn, and founders who just show up. Now, don't confuse. Look, there are founders who show up to these events and on LinkedIn, and I'm sitting there thinking, wow, they have nothing. Don't be that founder who is all like noise but no substance. People see through that right away. Right? We do. We're like, oh wait, they're just, if you're not tooting your horn, nobody is. So my thing is that it's about a balancing act of build, build substance, make sales happen, but make it a habit to, in some public forum, continually plug yourself, right? Because if you're not doing it, nobody's doing it for you. And in this day and age, it's permissionless. When I was raising, I had to always get, if LA Times wasn't featuring me, then nobody was. Now, who reads the LA Times? People are on, Instagram or LinkedIn or X, right? Reading about people. So as long as you're consistent and showing up every day and people begin to associate you with the guy who is working on that topic, there's credibility there. There is. And again, it's about doing the same boring thing every single day, showing up for the next however many years, and the returns are there. And then social media is that kind of beast too. So my point is this, for those of you with positive, negative energy, I don't care what kind of energy you have. In this day and age, if you are not utilizing social media to actually plug yourself consistently, then yeah, I don't know, you're doing something wrong.
Before we get to the last part of today's interview, where we ask you 3 questions, I love to ask people's idea of who their hero is, who a great role model is, and then I'll ask you a very simple question at the end. But I'd also like to add a question at the beginning of these last questions that I used to ask in my podcast, Educate, where people go through a lot of challenges, but we'll get to that here in a second. But before we do, tell us more about Ethos Fund. Tell us about who you're looking for, maybe some examples of some successes, because I think some of our listeners are going to be curious, like, how can I work with David and
yeah, I think a few things. There are 3 ways to work with me, and we will talk about the Ethos Fund first. The Ethos Fund is a very particular type of fund. It's a venture capital fund, and I think there should be some checklists going through people's heads. First off, if you're not right now for Fund 1, it's over, but we're moving on to Fund 2. But if you're not building specifically within the geographic regions that we are focusing on, then you don't work with the Ethos Fund. There are other ways to work with me, but not the Ethos Fund, right? When we go to our LPs, who are our partners, our limited partners, tell them about our thesis and what we're doing, we're going to honor that. So it's not that I don't like your business. It's not that your business sucks. Your business is probably freaking awesome. It's just within the confines of Ethos Fund, it doesn't fit. That's just first checklist. Second, there are way more founders with ideas out there than there are venture capitalists with AUMs. But point is this, for every time we write a check, we say yes, we're probably saying no to at least 10 other companies. At least, I think. I don't know if that's the right figure for me, but essentially what I'm trying to say is that don't take it personally if Ethos Fund can't work with you. It's because it's not about you. You don't exist in a vacuum. To think that a founder is just, it's their idea, their business, and their character, that's the only thing that's on display. No, that's very simplistic. Kind of like saying that, hey, you didn't get it to Stanford because of you. No, wait, there are other applicants they're looking at. Ethos Fund is particularly interested in third culture founders who are innovating, global from day one, who are actually have traction, again, and traction comes in very, very different forms. And last but not least, you honestly need to be the right chemistry with not just David, but Simon, the other GP, and however other GPs that are on the table. And if that doesn't fit, it's not going to happen. So the Ethos Fund isn't David. The Ethos Fund is a system. And if you don't work with a system, And like I said, the Ethos fund is trying to return over 50 million. That's why there's a system, right? And diversification. So again, that's that. But there are two other ways to work with me. One is a founder chapel. Guys, come. I mean, look, it might not be capital, but for some of you who need more than capital, who need presence, who need, I think, something way better than capital. People like Brandon, people like me, other founders, other investors who are there to be your sounding board. That's another way. And frankly, I had somebody LinkedIn message me recently saying like, hey, I'm part of Hubble. It's a portfolio company where I purposely put in like and I put in $100 for 15 minutes for my time. Part of that is to discourage people from booking time with me. Right? Like I don't have a lot of time in the world, and I don't need to be, it's not to make cash, to be honest. And frankly, not a lot of people start booking over Hubble. A decent amount, but not too many. And that's okay. I actually prefer it that way. But my point is this. Come to Founder Chapel. You don't have to pay Hubble. You don't have to come to spend time with me that way. It's the same advice I would give. You can ask direct questions. That's another way to work with me. Last but not least, another way to work with me is that if you're doing some sort of innovation that touches family or education, I usually lead angel and syndicate investing rounds. I do that on my own. I'll put in my own money and I'll bring my network of investors to try to bring a significant allocation to invest. And the reason I do that is I have a personal mission. By night, I run giftedtalented.com. I believe that the term gifted and talented needs to be redefined, and intentional parents need to be more empowered. And so when it comes to family, what touches family and what touches education, I tend to invest pretty a lot. Actually, I'm very active in that area. I'm not dumb money, meaning just because you have passion and an interest doesn't mean I'm going to invest in you. I'm going to guide you, going to get you to the right direction. But the folks I invest in education and family is that they're actually building a real business. So those are the three ways.
We end this podcast typically with, like I said, 3 questions. But for today's special maybe episode, I would like to ask this one question because I think people are benefiting from this question. So let me ask, because your journey obviously has had some hard times. And during those hard times, I imagine you had to find some way to survive and prosper. Maybe there was good people around you. Can you tell me what were some top things that you did to get through those difficult times?
Yeah, I've had my share. I've lost everything. I've got people schools who misunderstood situations, friends who sued me, try to take everything from me. Lost a leader to death, cancer. Had an employee of a company die literally in the classroom that I was running. He bled to death in front of like 7 kids. There's very, very, very it's very unlikely that we're going to go through life without some sort of tragedy that's hit us. Things will happen. I think there's a few things that the Bible does for you. And again, I'm not saying, I don't want to be so heartless to tell the audience, your audience, that God, God, God. I mean, it is God, but then I don't want to be so simple about it. There's in the book of Jeremiah, it's the Jeremiah the prophet. Just to tell a little story very, very quickly again. Imagine whatever country you're in, let's say the United States, I don't know, Russia or like North Korea comes and just destroys the country, destroys it. Well, I mean, think about it. I mean, just whatever country you're in, the enemy number 1 comes and just crushes that country, okay? Takes you, your family, and look, half your family's dead, gone. Takes your leaders, your best and brightest, to their capital and forces you to live in their country, assimilate, and be a part of them. I mean, that's what happened to Jeremiah, right? Literally, it literally happens to these people. So what do you do when your entire country people are going through depression, are going through like suffocating, like near death type of like, I want to die. I'd rather die than go through this kind of humiliation. Look, I think there's just try to imagine it for a second because it's if you can't imagine it, then there you go. That's because you haven't suffered that level, right? And if you can, my God, think about it. Yet through that hardship, through history, there's so many people who have been through, who've seen things that humans should not see, and they prevailed at the other end. Maybe not they themselves, but they believed for a greater cause, a greater good, and then their children did. If their children did, and then their children's children did. If their children's children did it, then their children's children did. So here's what I'm trying to say about going through hardship. For me, my life isn't just me. I think the greatest tragedy for most young people these days is that their entire life revolves around them. For me, my life is beyond me, frankly. My life touches my parents. My life touches my kids. And frankly, my life touches my kids' kids. I'm thinking about my country. I'm thinking about humanity. Whatever hardship I go through, I'm just one fraction of an equation in this bigger human story. And when you put it that way, I realize, hey, maybe I'm going through this tragedy so that my kid doesn't have to. That encourages him. Or maybe I'm going through this amazing blessing because what? My parents went through that freaking like amazingly hard time. They suffered, so I don't have to. But when you think about this race we're running, this game, as not just you and your own, but a continual story that's being written, because that's what the Bible is, you can get through most anything. Like anything. That's my secret sauce. Is I realize that I'm not alone. Even when I'm alone, I'm not. Like in my most darkest, most deepest valley times, I'm not alone. You'll realize you're not alone.
So it was interesting. The example that you described almost sounded like South Korea in the early 1900s, by the way, which is fascinating because all the different elements that you described, and yet the Korean peoples prospered or they survived and prospered, and they're one of the leading countries today, being profiled as the most advanced nation in Cloud Atlas in a fictitious world. But I think we see a lot of this in the real world. And it's just fascinating, but we're not here to prop up Korea. Korea will prop up itself. Last three questions, if you don't mind. And thank you so much for your time. It's been great. Is who would you consider your hero in this entire journey to start off with?
It's unfair, but definitely my mother is a hero. She's the entrepreneur. She was my first entrepreneur teacher. She ran restaurants like sushi shops, teriyaki shops, and sandwich shops. She's the one that taught me. I mean, if she could make it and she didn't give up, what gives me the right to give up, right? Kind of thing. To give you a non-family example, though, he's a twisted man, if you will. Ray Kroc, he's not the founder of McDonald's. He stole McDonald's. And honestly, he's not the kind of human being I'd want to become a friend with. Everything about him, the way he dumped his wife, there are things about him towards the end of his life. Him, Ray Kroc, founders of In-N-Out, I think the founders of Panda Express, these are all FMBs, but I highly, highly respect and look up to these people. I know I'm in tech. I know I'm in education. I'm in things that are far from FMB. Yet, going back to Ray Kroc. Here's a man who, in his 50s, late 50s, happened upon an opportunity and made it happen. He didn't give up. And within his lifetime, he got to see it become a global corporation within his lifetime. I respect the hell out of that because one, none of us should be giving up, like ever. We live till 120. We can. So look, Ray Kroc didn't have that. So we should all be more inspired to. FMB is hard. I think it's harder than tech. It goes to show if you're innovative, you think outside the box and you're willing to go where nobody else is going and you're willing to show up every day and do the boring stuff. So yeah, even someone like Ray Kroc can make things happen, right? So yeah, there's a man I respect and I look up to in a very kind of filtered way.
How about role models? Who would you say are good role models for our kids these days?
I know it's really hard to find good role models these days, right? It really is. And look, I the reason I can't answer this question like outright is because I have different role models for my kids for different things. It's so hard for me now that I'm an adult to like pinpoint one man and be like, that's your role model, or one woman even. But if I had to pick one person and you really push me to a corner, it might be Charlie Munger. Again, I read his almanac and he's a great guy, by the way. Supreme human being. But again, I wouldn't want my kids to be exactly like him, you know?
Right.
Yeah, like I think he's a great role model professionally, family-wise, and all of that. So yes, Charlie Munger, but spiritually, I think it's way more important in life. Yeah, I would want my kids to look up to Pastor Jack Hayford. He showed up every day, faithfully in his Van Nuys, California corner of the church, became a leader of that church, lived his life to the fullest, established what King's College and all of that. His wife passed away before him. Finally, he took off his ring. And there's everything about his spiritual journey. I respect that man. I don't know. In the Christian community, he's well known, but not very well known. But yeah, there's a spiritual giant that I would respect tremendously for my kids to look up to and follow. So yeah, there's two examples. Charlie Munger for the world of business. But in terms of spiritual kind of humility, leadership, and vision and faithfulness, it would be someone like Jack Hayford.
And last question, much easier than the previous three. And since you talked about F&B, what's your favorite food or drink?
Okay, so my wife, whenever it's my birthday, tries to get me pizza. I love pizza. I feel like there's no pizza that's bad. What I mean by that is pizza is as diverse as human beings. There's so many different types of pizzas. And like even the $1 pizza, which don't exist anymore, but there was a Celeste $1 pizza. Now it's like $3. You get at the local supermarket at the United States, wherever it is, Ralph's or Albertsons or Crocs. So you go there, there's Celeste pizza. Even that is delicious. You know, so pizza's my favorite food of all time. My favorite drink, pina colada. Yeah, people make fun of me all the time for that, but I don't get to drink it very much because it's a high calorie content. So I don't know. I love tea all the time. I drink all types of tea. Last but not least, my choice of beer is Guinness. Yeah.
Those are great choices. Yeah. So lastly, how we end the show is we usually ask how people could reach out to you in case you want to do another podcast interview or in case for other types of interviews these days, maybe a Substack interview for all we know. Yeah. I met you on LinkedIn, obviously, and I reached out to you on LinkedIn. Is that still the best way? Because you're a very busy man, and it's probably challenging to even land in your inbox. How can people reach out to you? Or tell us a little bit about.
Okay, the best way to reach out to me at the moment is email. Okay, David@ethosfund.vc. But LinkedIn, I'm very, very active. More active than I'm on email. Problem with LinkedIn DMs are quickly I get overwhelmed. Like right now, I'm so behind. I almost feel like whenever I try to go to the beginning, I miss the people in the latest people. I took it the latest people. I'm missing everyone in the middle and long time ago. I'm so tempted right now to hire just an executive assistant just for my LinkedIn DMs. Like seriously, part of me feels guilty about doing that because one of my greatest mentors, he's a billionaire, right? This guy, he's never had an EA ever. So I'm sitting here going, what the hell? How could I get an EA? That guy never had an EA and he managed it, but maybe I'm just not as talented or organized as he is. So I might need to, because I do believe in LinkedIn and a lot of people do reach out to me that way, but I just can't get back to them fast enough. So for now, if you LinkedIn message me, I will see it maybe, perhaps. I'm very active there, but perhaps the best way to get my attention is through my email right now because I haven't figured out a system yet.
David, we've been attempting to do this interview for a while because you've been busy we both had some scheduling conflicts or whatever the case may be, but I truly enjoyed spending time today, getting to know you even more. We obviously meet each other on your Founders Chapel every Friday at, I think it's 8 p.m.
Yeah, it's 8 p.m. Central, Fridays, 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. Eastern. If you're in Asia, it's usually 8 a.m. ICT, 10 a.m. Korea time. We purposely chose that time so that everyone could get on. Everyone that kind of matters for Ethos Fund and the audience in Asia and the United States. Yeah, that's how you can find the Founders Chapel. By the way, I'm trying to make Founders Chapel better. We just ended season 1, right? We're going to start season 2, and I'm realizing there could be a better way to do it. So I'm figuring it out.
Well, it was pretty fantastic in season 1. So thank you for doing that. And again, thank you for your time tonight and today, I guess, on your end. Appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you very much, Brandon. I appreciate what you do. Fantastic podcast. Amazing questions. I can't wait till I see the final product. I'll be pushing this like crazy.
If your calendar isn't already set, you're missing out on startup wins. Industry leaders, top advisors, and incredible tips await. Come back for future great episodes and entertaining guests, and come back for more insider strategies and incredible stories from the brightest VCs, founders, and operator experts. We're bringing you the best in the business twice a month. Hit that bell and stay winning with Startup Wins. See you soon.